Richard, thanks very much, and I can't tell you what a pleasure and indeed a surprise it is to find myself standing in front of you. I thought I'd start here being sort of telepathic because I'm pretty confident that I know what you're thinking. You're thinking possibly these questions or maybe that. Jim is here and is more than happy to chat to people so long as you're not on the record later on. But, well, no sooner do they wave hello than they wave goodbye, it seems. And transport has always been somewhere that ministers turn over quite frequently, but this year has been something of a record, even by the DfT standards. But no sooner has Grant waved hello than we are facing an election. 12th of December, we're told, and in that period, the shutters come down on officials and chief executives saying what they think or what they think is going to happen next. And frankly, none of us knows. We don't know who's going to win the election. We don't really know what the next government is going to make of RIS 2. In the next few weeks, you're going to see an awful lot of these people, I'm quite sure, and maybe, just maybe, they might say something that isn't about Brexit. But I suspect if they do, it's probably going to be about the environment. I'll be quite surprised, but let's see what the manifestos say, if they say anything about roads. So that means some people you will not be seeing very much of, and there's Jim and there's my friend Bernadette Kelly, who's the permanent secretary of the DfT, who'll be busy writing any number of day one briefs for new ministers as we speak today. So who am I? Sadly, I do not run the famous American auction company Gooding & Co., although I have tried to persuade them that I'm related and to let me have a go. For those of you who don't know, I'm the director of a small independent think tank. We were set up by the Royal Automobile Club, but we're not part of the club, and I don't have any little orange vans. So if you break down in your car, please don't ask me to help, because I can't. I thought what I'd start with, though, because as Richard said, I was in the transport department for a very long time, is to take us back to where the idea for Highways England came from. And some of you will know Highways England was set up in 2015, but actually the idea goes back quite a bit further to when Justine Greening was Secretary of State for Transport, and she asked Alan Cook to write a report. Some of you will remember Alan was the first independent chair of the Highways Agency, and Alan recommended that the Highways Agency be turned into an arm's-length company and said that this would be a good thing culturally and a good thing for the relations between the agency and its supply chain. But at the time, ministers weren't really persuaded. They couldn't see why doing that was worth all the hassle. But the idea stayed on the drawing board. A lot of work went into that. A lot of work was done by PwC at the time for the Highways Agency, and Graham Dalton there kept the idea fresh in his mind. And what happened was really between these two chaps, and you might not recognise both of them, but they're both really significant in this story, because that's George Osborne, who was Chancellor between 2010, which those of us who were there at the time will remember was peak austerity, no spending, road schemes cancelled, Mike, now Sir Mike Penning, calling me to his office to tear up the orders for road schemes so that I could be clear that when he said they were all cancelled, that's what he meant. That by 2013, George Osborne had decided that one surefire way of getting the economy going again and building confidence was to invest in infrastructure. And it was the arrival of the money that caused that chap, who is John Dowie, who was the roads director at the time, to see the opportunity for doing something different to what we'd always done in the past in DfT, which was to take the Chancellor's promise, announce it, set out to achieve it, spend lots of money, and then find, very shortly afterwards, that the money was taken away again. And what John achieved in the framework for RIS 1 was a means of, I hope, persuading everyone in the sector this was a 5-year deal and it was going to stick. And so there we had Colin Matthews, who came in as the first independent chair of Highways England, and it was actually Secretary of State Patrick McLauchlan, who was there at the time when Highways England was set up in 2015. What I thought I'd do in the next 10 minutes or so is just trawl through briefly what we actually had in mind, we in the department, when we were setting up Highways England, what I think we've got to, where we've got to now, some hopes for the future, and some risks that Jim, the team, and folks at DfT are going to have to manage. So What was it we had in mind? Well, first of all, I think I should say we did not regard the Highways Agency as in any way an unmitigated failure. We are not talking rail track. There was some good stuff going on. The Highways Agency had a good record of delivery, I think. After the Nichols review, which again some of you will remember, estimating of projects had got much better. Still a massive problem in government to get estimates early enough and not get hooked on unrealistic figures. Highways England actually helped out a number of other highway authorities in the severe weather we had. The horror of White Friday on the M11 having been consigned to history. But there was one thing about the Highways Agency, was that it became the Department for Transport's bank of last resort. Whenever, periodically, the railway suddenly needed a lot more money. One thing we did not want to hang on to was the idea that the roads budget was always there for the asking. But the sort of thing that we did have in mind was this list here, was to give the company that financial certainty and clarity to plan ahead and to build a better relationship with the supply chain. For the first time, to give them clarity of purpose in a set of outputs that the government was asking them to achieve, the equivalent in many ways of the statement of funds available and the output spec set for the railway. To create a company that saw through the journey Highways Agency had started on, which was moving from merely being an asset steward into a service provider for its many customers. To be a good neighbour, here we were thinking not just about relations with other highway authorities, but the whole world of development, as we used to call it, development control, and the ability of the Highways Agency as was to block planning applications if they would have an unfortunate traffic effect, and turning that on its head and asking the question, how can Highways England help foster the development, the new houses, the new factories that we need if we're going to have a successful economy. And I put control of destiny there because you may or may not know, much of what you might have thought was the work of the Highways Agency was actually reserved for headquarters in DFT, in Great Minster House. And we really wanted Highways England to develop a much greater capability in-house for proposing the solutions, developing the ideas that would meet the output specification. And just all round to be better, frankly. That's what we all wanted. So, what do we think? Well, I say, what do we think? This is what I think. And I thought a common cultural reference that I'm sure everyone in the room would recognise. Clarity and certainty, that funding envelope. Well, I am quite surprised and absolutely delighted that we've managed to get right to the end of RIS 1 and the budget has not been raided. Tick, excellent. And certainty within RIS 1, tick, excellent. But I can't give it 10 out of 10 because although I know a lot of work's been done on RIS 2, we don't have it yet. And that's going to start causing problems, I suspect, if we don't get an announcement very quickly after the new government's formed, because there's a lead time to the work that will need to be put in place for spring of next year and beyond. Customer focus, I would say Highways England is on a journey. There are many things that I like. I like the fact that we no longer have, frankly, asinine road safety messages littering the variable message signs of the country, but actually useful messages telling us something about the trips we're making, which is much better. A lot of thinking has gone on into better management of roadworks as well, but there's more to be done. And similarly, on being a good neighbour, being joined up with other highway authorities and with the development world, I've heard a lot of unsought, in fact, feedback from other highway authorities about the more positive relationship they feel they've got with Highways England these days. Not universal, and I'm sure that'll be a theme that comes up during the course of these 2 days. And then control of destiny. Well, I'm giving them an 8 because I think Highways England's capability has come on in leaps and bounds over the 4 years we've had so far. There's a much greater sense that the company can take the data and the masses of data that it generates and actually start asking careful questions of it and coming up with new solutions. So, on the whole, 75%, I think that's pretty good. And there have been some notable successes. Richard mentioned the A14 as being something that residents of the area perhaps don't like the roadworks, but nevertheless they might be pleased to know the scheme has proceeded faster than we expected and will be completed early, which is just the sort of news that we want to have. And then later on today, we're going to hear a bit more from Mike Wilson, I think, about design and aesthetics. I think that's something that's particularly interesting. It was something that previous roads ministers wanted to pursue, and it's a change in the way that we think about the road and the way we design it. So what am I hoping for? Just words here. Let's start with the obvious. I am hoping we get RIS 2. I'm hoping it looks really quite similar to RIS 1, and I hope we get it soon, so we can get back to that certainty that Highways England needs to plan. I'd like to see a better output specification. Anthony and I have spent many, many happy hours discussing the average delay measure, which is frankly completely pointless. We need something that's sharper, something that actually incentivizes performance and is better understood by the customers. And there are other aspects of the spec which I'm sure could be improved over RIS 1. We knew we were doing something at tremendous pace. Better can be done. I want everyone in this picture to remember that while politically the focus is so often on enhancements, on the big ticket schemes, Lower Thames Crossing, Stonehenge Tunnel, stewardship of the network is vitally important. The quality of the network, the reliability of the network is vitally important. Even if the next government we have decides that it, once again, wishes to be the greenest government ever, and perhaps scale back on enhancements, I do hope they don't scale back on maintenance, which is so vital. You're going to hear a lot over the 2 days about sustainability, so I'll just log some clever work is going to have to be done to match our ambition for road capacity and traffic with our ambition to tackle both CO2 emissions and air quality challenges. I'd like to see more data being made available. I would say that, wouldn't I, from a research body, but we're very keen to make use of the data Highways England generates. We're very happy to be working with Highways England on our road collision investigation project, which we think will unearth fresh approaches to deliver safer roads all round. And lastly, again, Richard's mentioned this, it's not just about Highways England. It's not just about the strategic road network. We have to be thinking beyond that. We have to think of the most important regional roads. It's 9 years since, as a civil servant, I was told we don't talk about regions, and we're not going to recognise regions anymore, which, as a transport professional, I always thought was wrong, and I'm very pleased we're talking about regions again, and I'm looking forward to meeting with the guys from the subnational transport boards later on today. A few risks that were going to have to be tackled if we're going to achieve those things. Safety is at the front of our minds, and Richard has mentioned, and I'm just going to put it there, that my close friend and confidant, President Edmund King, has stirred up a lot of anxiety about all-lane running. We need to see the data, and we need to be guided by the cold, hard facts, and hopefully the stock take that the Secretary of State for Transport currently has called will help shed some light on that. We've got to face up to this environmental challenge. The last 12 to 18 months has seen a flip-flop, I think, between a lot of attention on CO2 and a lot of attention on air quality. I was surprised, I suspect some others in this room might be surprised to hear that Bristol yesterday voted to ban diesel cars from the city centre for the working day. We need to see these two environmental challenges brought together into a single strategy that recognises both and tackles them both at the same time. A risk, I bring these characters back because they won't be tied to what the previous government thought. Even if they were in it, even if they led it, they won't be tied to it. And we'll just have to see what they say come January, I suspect, about taking forward RIS 2. And then it's not just all downside risks. Happily, we have the promise of the automated driving task, a car that can take your dog for a walk. You won't even have to go yourself. Lorries that could platoon and save fuel and save driver hour time and be more efficient. And of course, there's the electric revolution and the opportunity to rethink motorway service areas, which is something we're very keen to help with. So, in conclusion, I would like Jim, I would like Elliot to leave here with the thought that this is what I want from Highways England. This is the way I want them to think about their job of helping me, of helping you, of helping everyone get where they need to be, and to do so in a manner that's safe, smooth, and smart. So thank you. Once again, I'm very sorry that I'm not Jim O'Sullivan, but thank you for asking me here, and enjoy the rest of your conference.